Hey everyone. I wanted to talk to everyone today about trying to learn to control one's emotions, but also trying to constrict one's own thoughts. Okay? Now, why I want to bring this up. I find that in the time period that we're living in, we are being almost pushed to want to either be polar opposites. There's no middle ground. Polar opposites, whether it be of emotions, either you feel everything or you feel nothing. You think about everything or you think about nothing. Things of this nature. Either you're okay with every form of sexuality, or you practically don't even want to have sex unless for the sake of procreation. Now, I know that there are middle grounds. It's impossible to not have that. However, I've been noticing that there's been a large push for pansexuality. I've been noticing a push for, how do I say, using one's own conscious thoughts to decide what gender that individual either possesses or chooses. See, I find that imagination, when left to, complete free will, without restrictions, without even guidance, whether it be outside of the self or within the self, you lose yourself in imagination. Your imagination will just run wild. Now, as someone who is, I've always been pretty spiritual, but now as a Christian, and I find myself in Christ, I do realize that demons do exist, and they use these things. They use emotions, and they use thoughts. Two things that are wildly complicated in and of itself. But with that being said, I find it almost simple if you try to think from a perspective as a being that does not have fleshly form. Now, I don't know enough about demons. I don't have a sense, or I guess you could say a degree or a profession around demonology. So it's not like I would know these things. But as someone who looks into things the way that my grandfather would look at things, you have to look about the capabilities, and then from the capabilities, you have to look at what would you be able to do in that position. Now, of course, the reason why he taught me these things is he says sometimes the best way to know what someone's going to do is to know their capabilities. That's even though that, yes, he explained to me when I was younger that the Soviet Union was more like the left hand to our right hand. We were the right hand, and if anything, these hidden hands, if you will, although we were the open hand and they were more like the closed fist, we were part of a larger body that ruled the world. And of course, there are some adversities between, conflict between the left and the right. Ironically so, they were still part of the same body, and therefore they had the same goals. So from what he explained to me is they still had this kind of competition between each other. So for him, even though he went to the Middle East at one point in time, whenever the Gaza Strip was taken, back in, I think, the 1970s, 1960s, late 60s, early 70s, around that time period, he was telling me how he went there for a little bit, and his main goal was to observe the weaponry that were taken from the Egyptians and, from the other forces that were there. And, he saw a lot of horrible things. I'll have to make another video for that, of what the Israelis did to those people, as well as what they did to the innocents there that weren't even a part of the conflict. But needless to say, his main goal was to go with the Israeli forces and then to observe the equipment, and then from there to try to have, they had like a form of calculation of what one's technology is within their nation. Because if you're willing to give away something, you're most likely not going to give away your best items. So therefore, they understood with what they gave, they must have been higher than the technology that was given to the Egyptians. So, with that being said, he taught me to try to understand this a little bit of knowing one's capabilities and therefore knowing what one's potentialities are. Because once you find those two polar opposites, if you will, what you're capable of and what you're free to do if you so choose, you can find a middle ground of what that person actually is going to do. And with that being said, I take that same thought process and I try to transplant it on something that is a demon. Not to say that I try to get myself lost on like demons or whatever. However, I think it's something that one has to take into question when you're, going on a spiritual journey, or in general when you find yourself in Christ, to really look at and then look at what's going on with the rest of the world. Why is it that the world we live in, they want us to completely accept everything, but not condemn anything? With that being used, as a demon, how would I use this? Simple. I would set people apart. The ultimate goal of demons, or of Satan, is to spread division, correct? Of course, you guys can leave something in the chat below to say, no, you're absolutely wrong. So, again, I'm almost talking to myself here, but I'm talking to my viewers as well, hopefully. Demons would want to set possession upon people, and the best way to do that is through free will. The best way to do that, in my opinion, is through, aside from atheists going into wrath and pride and such, it would actually be more favorable into lust and into greed. So capitalism breeds a lot of that. But, and not to say that, somehow like socialism or communism, by no means. In my opinion, money is money, and it's a means of exchange, and it's a different form of communication, but through trade. Needless to say, it's a tool, and it should never be abused, because just like with war, these tools are an extension of sin. Either you give in to it, or you learn to control it and master it so you don't even have to deal with it. So, through the LGBTQ communities, and through, in general, those who see their love synonymous with sex and sexual desire and perversions, that is something I would look more favorable upon if I was a demon. Because at least through that, I would be able to exert myself on people through rituals such as sex. Sex is technically ritual, if you think about it. Because all rituals are is that you have an organized set of things to have a certain outcome. Now, when you're dealing with sex in a marriage, your outcome, at least when you're trying for it, is to have a child. You want to bear fruit. So clearly, the sexual act, the goal at the end of that is to have a child, to bear seed. However, when it comes to, a lot of people in general nowadays, but when it comes to not marriage sexual relations, or in general sexual relations that has nothing to do with the opposite sex or procreation in that, your goal is self-satisfaction. Self-satisfaction is easy for a demon to try to take hold of. Just look at people who are gluttons. Now, that's aside from sex, yes, but it's a form of self-pleasure. There's a lot of people out there who, like, how do I get fat? And then they're eating gas station food, food from McDonald's almost every day or every other day, They're drinking soda all the time. Well, I feel more hydrated with soda. I know someone personally that I love and care for that said that they felt more hydrated by Coca-Cola than they did by water. And I love them to death. But it's just some people are lost by these sins. And I say it like that because it's like when you don't think about these things, you don't know what a sin is. Or you don't know what these sins have hold on us. That's why we are sinful beings. Because obviously we still get the feeling to eat, We get a feeling to procreate or have sexual relations. We get the feelings to be entertained, so idol worship. We get all these feelings, wrath, etc., wanting to feel right to the point where you want to exert that upon others, whether it be, reasonable or no. uh, these things are natural to us. So I certainly agree that demons in today's time period have an easy job. Very easy. And if I was to really control a population, I would do it through sex. Because one, like a Pavlovian response, as well as if you know anything about drugs, then you're always looking for that high. And for those who seek multiple targets for the sake of that self-satisfaction, you go down a long route where your rituals are with multiple people, so you're spreading. And therefore you're spreading this, almost like a hex in a way. Hex and sex, it's funny how they kind of rhyme. Needless to say, the reason why I brought all this up is when you think about the beast, when you think about the concept of the beast. Well, what is a beast? In my opinion, a beast is similar to its actual definition, like a non-human, like a cow or a chicken, a dog, a cat, tiger, lion, gazelle, whatever. These things are beasts. Non-humans are beasts. To them, sins are their existence. I've seen fucking male dogs fuck another male dog, and then at the same time, then an hour later they find a female dog and then they go out that. So to me, this is kind of like a reflection of our human existence when I see beasts, because when you see beasts, part of you has to say, I'm better than this. I don't lick my nuts to clean them. I don't lick my ass to clean it. I don't lick my hair to clean it. I don't do these things to clean it. And I do something else to do so, where it actually cleanses it, not just wipes it away. I mean, aside from the fact that we don't have these capabilities to actually take care and disinfect these things with our mouths, but with that all aside, it's the idea that beasts are immersed in sin, and they are one with sin. They have no consciousness. They go with what they feel. They feel hungry, they seek food. If they feel the need to mate, they fuck anything. I don't know if you have any dogs or know anyone with dogs. Dogs will screw anything with legs, and even things that don't. So, I think with that being said, whenever you look at humans by that same manner, you should be able to see one and then notice the other. Now, I'm not trying to say that people with, who do not ascribe to heterosexuality as beastly. However, I do find that, as myself, who used to be bisexual, and before I met Christ, the more that I went into the LGBT community, the more I realized that you're bound to your feelings, and you're led by it, and so many of my good friends were in bad relationships because they felt like it was right, just because you feel like something's right doesn't mean it's right, I bet if you touched a piece of what's it called? It's not real ice. My brain's losing me here. It's a good thing. It's a type of really cold object. It's like a purity, like a cold frozen hydrogen, I guess. It looks like ice, but you don't want to touch it, and you certainly don't want to drink it. Point is, when you touch it, you will burn yourself. Sure. Dry ice. There you go. So dry ice. You don't want to touch dry ice because you will actually burn yourself. However, if you're burning yourself, wouldn't you burn yourself with fire? Does that mean that it's warm? It's hot? No. It's dry ice. It's freaking cold. So, again, feelings can be deceiving. Just like your thoughts. Your thoughts can be also deceiving. As someone who has been abused as a child, I find that thoughts can definitely, lead you some bad routes, especially when you're a child and this happens, because one, you want to escape those painful feelings of fear and pain, and to do so, you end up using I mean, your imagination, your fantasy. You try to run wild with it. I got so good at using my fantasy that I could just sit there and just completely gone to this reality. And that's also kind of why I got into other faiths and started to believe things that I probably shouldn't have, because I therefore could imagine these things. My mind became so powerful that there's a lot of people who would ask me, it's like, where'd you learn all these things? How did you come across this? What makes you think this way? And for a time, it hurt too much to actually think about where it all started was getting abused, and then from there on, actually having time spent with people who, opened my mind, like my grandmother or my grandfather, and as well as my own father. But ultimately, it's the stem of it started when I was abused. It broke my naive wall, if you will. I mean, as disgusting as it is, that horrible act is what made me almost adult in mind as a child. And I think that's also part of the reason why a lot of these cults, they use the sexual abuse of children, is because in their ways, it's like in their minds they're kickstarting their children into power, and to do so, you have to abuse them sexually. I think that's the reason why a lot of these people that you have, even in movies, I think a lot of movie stars were sexually abused as children, and that's why they're so charismatic and why they're so easy to come up with roles and be able to get into these movie positions, because again, they're good actors because they've had to lie to themselves to deal with the hurt and the pain of being raped as children. So, anyhow, with all that being said, I'm trying to keep this as short as possible. My phone can only handle so much. The beast is just, in essence, the human that lets go of consciousness to the point where it's just feeling. Now, the cultist lets go of feeling, hence the cremation of care, so they can be like the owl without feeling. They just see, they're attracted to, and they attack. That's also why the owl does what it does, because the owl seeks the weak. The owl doesn't seek a predator. The owl seeks things that are weaker than itself so it can kill and eat. So it generally likes to attack children. Cremation of care. Anyhow, lo and behold, I believe in the time period that we're going up into, the beast system is really just a system that turns humans into beasts, quite literally. And with these technology they have out there, such as AI or 5G, and using MK Ultra, it's here. It's already here. It's around us. I know I'm probably already affected by this. And all I can say to you guys is be in Christ. Pray every day. Try to recognize sin and the fact that we're always in sin and that we get pulled by it. So you have to recognize these things and then realize not to completely detach yourself from it, but to then therefore recognize its pull on you. I like games, but that's idolatry, quite literally. You're playing a game for self-satisfaction. You're watching a bunch of pictures on a screen that's just flashing light. It's programming. And in those visions that I had as a child, people were rather beastly. And it's coming. The technology is already here. And I'm already the age that it happened at in those visions. So if it's not going to happen this year, it's certainly going to happen the next. I didn't make it to 30. Not in those visions. And that's pretty much it for tonight. God bless you all and good luck.